My mill told my husband to have a secret bank account just in case. She said, "You need a backup plan." So I opened a joint account with my mom. She lost it when she found out. It's strange how, in a marriage, there can be moments that just twist everything. One day, you feel steady, you know your life, you trust your spouse. And then something happens, and all that stability is suddenly hanging by a thread. For me, that day came because of my mother-in-law, Marcy. Drew and I had been married for 6 years, and I thought we were solid. We'd met right after college at a friend's party in Minneapolis, hit it off instantly, and by the end of the night, I couldn't imagine not knowing him. There was this warmth about him, a quiet, thoughtful side that made him seem grounded. From the outside, we were a normal couple, and for the most part, we were. But Marcy. She was always hovering in the background, like a shadow I couldn't shake. I was never good enough in her eyes, although she never said it outright. It was little things, the way she would ask Drew about his job, ignoring mine, how she'd give decorating advice on our home in St. Paul, subtly hinting that it could be nicer. And then there was her favorite phrase, "Oh, Catherine, you're just so different." Different. Not in a good way. One night, Drew came home looking tense, like he had a secret he was trying to keep down. "Everything okay?" I asked, eyeing him from the kitchen as he dropped his keys on the table. "Yeah," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Just talked to Mom earlier." "Oh." I waited, sensing something more, but he went straight to the fridge, pretending to be interested in a bottle of sparkling water. Finally, he closed the fridge, then cleared his throat. She had some advice for me. About our finances." I gave a small laugh, not thinking much of it. "What, is she an investment advisor now?" "Not exactly," he said, looking at the floor. "She suggested that I should have a separate account. Just for me." My smile faded. "A separate account? For what?" Drew shifted uncomfortably. "Just as a backup plan." "A backup plan?" I repeated, feeling a prickle of anger rise. "In case of what?" He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Catherine, don't take this the wrong way. She just thinks. Well, she said sometimes marriages don't work out." "Sometimes marriages don't work out?" I echoed, incredulous. "And she's telling you this now, 6 years in?" "Catherine, it's not that she thinks we're doomed or anything," he said quickly, holding his hands up. "She just. I don't know, she thinks it's smart to be prepared." "To be prepared?" I stared at him, my heart hammering. "Prepared for what? For us splitting up?" "No. Look, I told her it was a little excessive. But she insisted, and, I don't know. She kind of got in my head." I swallowed, feeling like a rug had been pulled out from under me. "So, you actually thought about doing it? About opening a separate bank account?" Drew paused, caught. I considered it, yeah. But it's not because I don't trust you. It's just. Mom can be convincing." I laughed, but it was humorless, bitter. "Wow. I never thought you'd actually let her talk you into something so distrustful." "Catherine, come on. You know I trust you. I just thought maybe. I don't know, maybe it was practical." "Practical?" I shook my head, feeling tears sting my eyes. "Is this what marriage is to you? A just-in-case plan?" "No. Catherine, you're blowing this way out of proportion." "I don't think I am, Drew. I think I'm seeing exactly where your priorities are. You don't think I can be trusted to be your partner." He took a step closer, reaching out. "It's not about trust, Catherine. It's about. I don't know, Mom always said that it's better to be safe than sorry." I stared at him, suddenly feeling like I was looking at a stranger. "Safe from who, Drew? From me? Look, I told you, I didn't even open the account." "You're taking this way too seriously," he insisted, but there was a hint of doubt in his voice. "And you're not taking it seriously enough," I replied. "You actually considered it, Drew. That's the part I can't get over." The silence stretched between us, thick with unsaid accusations. Finally, he exhaled, looking down. "I don't know what to say," he muttered, defeated. "I don't think there's anything to say," I replied, turning away. That night, I lay awake in bed next to him, staring at the ceiling, listening to his breathing. He fell asleep quickly, but I couldn't shake the hurt. The betrayal of it, the way he'd so easily allowed Marcy to plant this idea in his head. How long had she been waiting to make her move? The next morning, he left for work, and I tried to shake off the sinking feeling. I went through my routine, coffee, shower, answering emails. But Marcy's words were stuck in my mind like a thorn. When my mom called to check in, I finally let it all out. "So Marcy actually told Drew he should have a secret bank account, huh?" my mom said after a long silence, sounding more furious than I'd expected. "Yeah," I sighed. "She said it was a backup plan. Like a spare set of keys or something. Mom's tone hardened. That's not just a backup plan. She's planting a seed of doubt. She's making him feel like he can't rely on you. I sighed. I know. And he actually considered it. That's the part that kills me. Catherine, you know I don't like to interfere in your marriage, but maybe it's time you have your own backup plan. What do you mean? She paused. I mean, why not open an account with me? Nothing sneaky, just a little bit set aside. You'd know where it is, and we can build it together. At first, it sounded crazy. I didn't want to start keeping secrets from my own husband. But the longer I thought about it, the more it made sense. If Marcy was going to encourage him to put himself first, maybe I should look out for myself, too. The next week, I went to the bank with my mom, and we opened a modest joint account. It wasn't a lot, just a few $100s each month that we'd put aside together. It felt empowering, but it also made me feel oddly vulnerable, like I was admitting defeat by preparing for something I didn't want to believe in. That night at dinner, I casually mentioned it to Drew. By the way, I set up a joint account with my mom today, I said, taking a sip of water. I watched his reaction closely. He froze, his fork halfway to his mouth. You what? It's nothing huge, I replied, giving him a reassuring smile. Just a little extra savings, you know. A backup plan. A backup plan? He repeated, his voice tight. Catherine, that's completely different. Why? I asked, raising my eyebrows. You said having a separate account was smart. I figured, if it's smart for you, it's smart for me. He put down his fork, and I saw his jaw clench. This isn't the same thing, Catherine. You're doing this to get back at me. I shrugged. I'm just being practical. Just like your mom suggested. The anger in his eyes was unmistakable. This is manipulative, Catherine. No, Drew. It's not. It's what you and Marcy have been doing all along, I replied, keeping my voice calm. I'm just making sure I have a backup plan, too. The look he gave me was one I'd never seen before, hurt mixed with something darker, almost a warning. He pushed back from the table and stormed out of the kitchen, leaving me alone in the silence. Over the next few days, things only got worse. Drew would barely speak to me, and when he did, it was with a chill in his voice. He'd leave for work early, come home late, and avoid me entirely on weekends. It felt like I was living with a stranger. Thanksgiving rolled around, and Marcy invited us up to Duluth for the holiday. The tension was thick enough to cut, but Drew insisted we go. If we don't show up, it'll look bad, he said. I wanted to argue, to tell him I didn't care about appearances anymore, but I bit my tongue. We drove to Duluth in silence. The tension between us felt like a third passenger, heavier than our suitcases in the back. I glanced over at Drew as he gripped the wheel, his eyes fixed on the road. Part of me wanted to reach out, to ask him to talk things through. But the larger part of me, the part that was hurt and angry, stayed silent. I wasn't going to give in. I wasn't the one who planted seeds of doubt in our marriage. When we arrived at Marcy's, she greeted us with a wide, forced smile. Her house was picture perfect, with every decoration in place, every corner spotless. But I could feel her judgment the moment I stepped inside. Marcy had always been one for appearances, and today was no different. She fussed over Drew, making him feel like he was home while I felt like an unwelcome guest. Catherine, she said, giving me a tight-lipped smile, I'm so glad you two could make it. Drew said you've been keeping busy lately. Yes, Marcy, I replied, matching her smile with one of my own. I've had a lot on my plate. Marcy's eyes narrowed just a little, but she quickly recovered. Well, you're here now. That's what matters. Family is everything, isn't it? Of course, I said, resisting the urge to roll my eyes. Dinner was a quiet affair. Drew barely spoke to me, focusing his attention on Marcy and her stories about Duluth's latest gossip. I tried to keep my head down, but I couldn't help noticing how Marcy's gaze kept flicking to me with that smug, self-satisfied look. I knew she thought she'd won, that she'd somehow succeeded in driving a wedge between Drew and me. And that's when I decided it was time for a change of plans. After dinner, Marcy pulled Drew aside for a private chat. I stayed in the dining room, pretending to help clear the dishes, but my ears were sharp, and I could hear her words through the doorway. Drew, honey, she murmured, just loud enough for me to catch. I'm worried about Catherine. She seems different, don't you think? Cold, even. You need to protect yourself. I clenched my teeth. This woman was unbelievable. Yes, Mom, Drew replied, his voice low. I know. I'm doing what I can. Good, Marcy said, her tone soothing. You have to think of yourself. You can't trust anyone fully, not even family sometimes. I'd heard enough. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. Then I walked right into the room, carrying a tray of coffee mugs. I made eye contact with Drew and gave him a smile I'd been saving for this very moment. You know, I said, setting the tray down carefully, I think it's time we all had a little talk. Marcy's eyes flashed with surprise. Oh? About what, dear? About marriage, trust. And backup plans, I said smoothly. Drew looked at me, his face pale. Catherine, what are you doing? I ignored him and focused on Marcy. You're right, Marcy. Sometimes you can't trust everyone, not even family. But it's funny, because when people try to play games, sometimes it all backfires. Marcy narrowed her eyes, her confidence slipping. I'm not sure what you mean, dear. Oh, I think you do, I said. I pulled out my phone, opening a file I'd been holding onto for a while. See, I did a little digging into some financial transactions. Specifically, Drew's. I handed my phone to Drew, showing him a screenshot of several transactions from an account he hadn't told me about. Turns out, he did open that secret account. And Marcy, I assume that's your advice showing its true colors. Marcy's face went pale, and Drew looked at me, his mouth hanging open.
Catherine, I can explain.
Oh, I'm sure you can, I replied, my voice cold. But here's the thing. I also opened an account. One with my mother. And guess what? I've been saving up every month, building a nice little just-in-case fund of my own. Marcy's jaw dropped. You did what? That's right, I said, feeling a surge of satisfaction. I followed your advice, Marcy. And now I have my own backup plan. Just in case. Drew's face twisted in anger. Catherine, why didn't you tell me? I laughed, a bitter sound. Oh, you mean like you didn't tell me about your own account? Funny how trust works, isn't it? The silence in the room was thick, tense. Marcy looked like she was about to explode, but I held her gaze, refusing to back down. Well, it seems like you've both thought this through, Marcy said, her voice cold. Maybe it's best if you each protect yourselves. Oh, don't worry, Marcy, I said with a smile. I'm more than protected now. You see, I also got some legal advice. Turns out, if a spouse hides assets in a divorce, it can affect the settlement quite a bit. Drew's face went white. Catherine, are you serious? I shrugged. Maybe I am. Or maybe I'm just giving you a taste of what it feels like to have your own partner planning for a life without you. Marcy stood up, glaring at me. You're manipulative, Catherine. I always knew you had it in you. Maybe, I replied, standing my ground. Or maybe I've just learned how to protect myself. Thanks to you. Drew looked between us, defeated, his shoulders slumping. Mom. I think you need to go. Marcy's mouth opened, shocked. What? Drew looked down, his voice a whisper. You've done enough, Mom. Please. Go. Marcy stormed out, slamming the door behind her. The house fell silent, leaving only Drew and me, both staring at each other. I could see the regret in his eyes, the realization that his own choices, and his mother's influence, had led us here. Catherine, he started, his voice hoarse. I'm so sorry. I looked at him, feeling a strange sense of peace wash over me. I know, Drew. But I don't know if sorry is enough anymore. He swallowed, his eyes brimming with tears. What do we do now? I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of my choices, the satisfaction of reclaiming my own power. Maybe we start by figuring out what trust really means, Drew. And this time, we leave Marcy out of it.